This is the President McCormack Podcast with your host, Mark McCormack.
Ladies and gentlemen, on the podcast today, we have Brad Clifford. Thanks for coming on, Brad.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me. I'm stoked to be here.
The first thing I got to talk about, it just popped in my head.
Okay.
I'm very honored that you came on my podcast before you went on Dr. Nicholas's Hallen's podcast, your business partner.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And he so now it all makes sense too, because he sent me a text and he's like, "You didn't come on my podcast first." So I'm gonna be eating that for a while. Yeah.
I'll shove it back in his face.
Nick, I'm sorry, brother.
I'm telling you, you should have said, dude, I didn't know you had a podcast, and then just let him line up.
No, that would be a lie. I've actually I've seen so many of his podcasts. Yeah. I'm like mad that you haven't even invited me, Nick. So
yeah, exactly, Nick. If you put the invitation out there, what's he supposed to do? Beg?
Yeah, I'm not gonna beg you. Mark was like, "Come hang out." I'm like, I'm gonna come hang out with Mark.
Yeah, that's fun. So we were just chatting. You married a British girl.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
My gosh, what's that like?
It's all sorts of fun and intense and amazing. Yeah. I got to know you a little bit. I didn't know that you spent some time in Scotland and your family's, from the British Isles. So we got some similarities.
Yeah, big time.
Dude, being married to have you been around British women a lot besides your grandparents?
Oh yeah.
Oh, and you can relate to this. I mean, American women, they like to sometimes dance around pleasantries where, how are you? Oh, good. A smile. You ask a British woman, how are you? They'll tell you straight up, or they'll be like, why are you asking me that? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, one time it was funny with my dad. I just phrased it wrong because I wasn't trying to get into his business because my dad's Scottish. And I just said, how's your marriage, Dad? And boom, I was like, what the, how's your marriage? I was like, yeah, great. How's yours? It's like, it's all kind of contentious moment. I was like, all right, mental note. One question I can't ask my dad. All right, we won't do that.
Yeah, you ask like an English guy. You'll be like, or me and you, like I'll be like, hey Mark, how's your day? You're like, good, man. Yeah. You ask English guys sometimes they'll be like, yeah, shit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
Oh, cool. Why is it shit?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a little more honesty and truth.
There is. I'll tell you one. So a long time ago, I had a home teacher.
Okay.
So for those of you who don't know what that is, it's when you're an LDS member, they send a guy to your house every month just kind of check on the family and chat with you or whatever, right? And he came to our house and he's like, this is just me being, I was probably 22 years old, 23 years old when I got married, right? And he goes, yeah, I'm getting divorced. And I'm like, oh. He goes, yeah, my wife cheated on me and, we're getting divorced and that's kind of that. And I was like, oh, that's cool, man. And he just looks at me and he goes, not cool. I was like, ah!
Yeah, not cool, bro.
Yeah, I was like, I didn't mean it was cool. I mean, it's cool you're getting out of it and can live your dreams now, I think.
Oh man, those happen all the time though. Yeah. I can think about all the times where you just put your foot in your mouth. You're not doing it intentionally, but you're like, when you say it, you're like, oh man, that really came off like an asshole. But I'm not an asshole. I'm sorry, man.
Yeah. I really like you. You're a nice guy. Yeah. Maybe I'll see you again.
Yeah.
But we were in a young married ward. So it was like only married people were in it, right? So as soon as he got divorced, which was like the next week, he was just gone. I've never seen him again. So I hope he's doing great.
Yeah, shout out to that guy. Yeah. I hope he's doing great.
Yeah, whatever your name is.
Yeah. Hopefully now he thinks it's cool too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Cool. Yeah, it was cool.
He's gonna be listening and be like, you know what, Mark was right.
Yeah.
Cool. My life is so much cooler.
Well, if we only knew when we were young.
Yeah, dude.
So, what's your favorite British thing?
British thing? Oh.
Like when Beth says we're heading over there, what are you looking forward to?
You know what, man? Because I'm a history guy. I love history. I love, society through generations and like analyzing human dynamics. When I spent time in Mexico on my mission. And so that was the first time I was exposed to historic locations, I would say. Yeah. I mean, you go to like the Grand Canyon. Of course, there's like so many years of evolution, in the landscape and the geography, but nothing that like a human built there, right? Like we have 200 years basically of civilization. So in Mexico, I was like, oh wow, you're thinking through these dates and you're trying to process them, and that was my first exposure. It was in Mexico. So in England, we went. So her grandmother lives in a place called York, which is literally the most beautiful place I've ever been to. If you've seen Harry Potter, like I can't even know if I'm saying it right. Diagon Alley, literally filmed in York, like one of the streets. And you look like you're in Harry Potter land in the city center, but around it is city walls that are like huge castle that they've preserved. And when you walk up to the walls, it's separated by the Anglo-Saxon period, and then it goes down to the bottom base, and the bottom base is Roman period. And I remember I'm walking into this, and just the amount of like historical context that I'm observing, like picture you're on grass, you can see the whole city. You're seeing like, 1500s, 900, my brain couldn't process it. Like it was overwhelming, the historical context I was taking in. So that's been by far, like the history of England is amazing. And I get sucked into that every time. Yeah. Viking culture, Anglo-Saxon culture. We've been in manors, like Beth and I both like to go to like the old manors that they keep in. And you're looking at the Inquisition times. You're looking at the period where Church of England is coming in to ransack people, and burn them at the stakes. So inside the manors, like where people would hide to escape and get through, and how they live their lives. It's crazy, man. Like all that historical context. So that's my favorite part of England. Yeah, for sure. Other than the brute honesty of English people, which is so fun. That's why I'm married to one.
Yeah. England's it's an amazing place. When I lived in Scotland, the first house I lived in was built in the 1600s.
Isn't that crazy? So when you're when you're that young, like, was that hard to process?
Yeah.
Because you're like, my house was built in 1982. Exactly. You know what I mean? Like, exactly. Or 67, and my parents redid our home, and it's 1960. You can like put a date on that and have some form of reference. Yeah. But like that reference, I mean, how did you process that? It's kind of funny. The house leaked all the time, it was like cold as hell, all this kind of stuff, right? Yeah. They did modernize it a little bit, but I mean, the walls are straight, either stone or plaster. Right. And you can kind of see where people added on to it. And they were like, it was a row of 4 townhouses too. Uh-huh. So I think they just kind of added a couple townhouses to the end, everything. Yeah. It's all that like smooth, almost like plaster on the outside with the little pebbles in it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We used to get yelled at if we ever because sometimes you sit at doorsteps and just pick the pebbles off. People lose their minds over that. Yeah. But I met a couple people, dude, that were like, they were angry that in America we knock things down. Really? Right. That we don't preserve more?
Yeah, because we don't preserve. Like, I think, remember when they knocked down Yankee Stadium? Uh-huh. I don't know if that's when I was over there or not, but like, they have this old Yankee Stadium, and they're like, yeah, we want a new one. Boom, another $2 billion building, and it just blows their mind. Like, why would you ever just fix it? Just fix it. I don't know. That's what they do. Not my money.
But ask those guys, yeah.
Yeah, I met a lot of people that were mad we didn't join the war for a while. Mm. Keep in mind I was 19. Mm-hmm. I'm like, which war? And they
lose their mind. Yeah.
Oh yeah, World War II. Yeah, I heard about that. You're welcome.
Back-to-back World War champs.
Yeah, exactly. Back-to-back World War champs. Oh, I like that. That's gonna go in my arsenal.
Yeah, my English family doesn't love that one.
Yeah. Oh, I bet. So I'll tell you the one jackassy thing I said on my mission to a person. Right. So we knock on this door. The lady answers. Most people just tell us to F off and close the door. Right. Uh-huh. I mean, literally. Uh-huh. And actually, the F word over there is not really that offensive. They use it pretty nicely.
Casual conversation. Yeah.
And this chick's talking to us, and she's like, "Where are you from?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm from America." I think my companion was from America too. And they're like, "Oh yeah, that's cool, blah blah blah." And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, like you kind of look down this long hallway, and that's the kitchen's in the back, dining room, bedroom, whatever, right? And this guy just starts yelling at us. "Oh, F you Americans, blah 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 blah. You this, blah blah. You think you run the world, blah blah blah." Mm. I was kind of looking at him, and I was just like, "Oh, here we go again." Like this happened like not every week, but like every now and again, probably 2 or 3 times a month. Yeah. And I go, "Well, sir," I'm just kind of being a smart ass, right? I'm like, "Well, sir, actually, he's like, you're an American church, blah, blah, blah." And I go, "Well, actually, sir, we have more members outside the United States than we do inside." He's like, "Do you think I get that great?" Just starts going crazy. Yeah. And I don't know. I just kind of snapped in my head. I'm like, "Okay, this is the day. I'm gonna let him have it." And I go, "Hey, can I just ask you one question?" He goes, "What?" And I go, "Do you speak German?" And he looks at me and he goes, "No, I don't speak German." I go, "You're welcome." And dude, he came sprinting down that hallway, and I was like kind of backing up, like gonna catch him almost. Like, oh, I'm gonna get my ass handed. Well, no, I wouldn't have a. We were gonna fight. That's what's gonna happen.
You're gonna get. You're preparing for an altercation.
Getting ready for this freaking fight, and then he just hits the doorway and just starts giving it to me. And my companion's like, "Let's go." Sorry. You know, and I wanted to be like, "Would you like a Book of Mormon?"
You just dig in. I love that.
Yeah, I kind of let that dude have it. But and then my companion told everybody, and all the Americans thought it was hilarious. But yeah, dude, it's just different over there. Like you really feel like you're a long way away from home.
Totally.
But everyone speaks English, so it doesn't feel like you're super foreign either.
It's a weird, because like when I was in Mexico, you're speaking Spanish. Cultures are similar in ways, but different enough where you feel transported somewhere else. I remember when I was in England, I'm like, this is very weird. Like I feel like I'm at home, but in a different version of home. Yeah. Where the architecture is different, the food's different, and the people, but they're still speaking English. It's just a different English. It's just it's like a weird thing to really describe. Yeah. But you feel very at home and not at home at the same time. Yeah. It's odd. Yeah.
Yeah, and it takes a minute to get there. You know.
Yeah. Beth's dying right now, dude. She got home Saturday night. And still, she's just.
Oh, she's jet lagged.
She's so jet lagged. Poor thing.
Oh man. So how'd you meet Beth?
Good question. I was dating when I was at the U. I was dating a friend of hers, like a casual friend, and great girl. But it was more, I'm sure you dated girls where you were just like, we're like really good friends. Yeah. And it'll probably just stay friends. And so it was like a casual thing, and we were just kind of dating, and Beth showed up. And like, it was the closest thing that probably you could ever have to like the rom-coms, like 2000s, where it's like, the time slows down and like the cheesy songs playing. And I was like, oh my gosh. She walked in, and I just was like trying to figure out the whole time, how do I do the old switcheroo? Yeah. So I broke it off with that girl. And then 6 months tried to convince her to go out with me. And it was like shutdown after shutdown.
Really?
Oh, dude. Yeah. I got to go see if, because Facebook was just barely out. So that's like how we stayed in contact. Mm-hmm. I had her cell, but she would never respond. So it was like Facebook DMs, like the first slide in DM I ever did. And 6 months. And then we went out, and the rest was history from there.
Honestly, when I asked that question, I was expecting you to say something like that. Because Beth is actually strikingly beautiful.
She's a beautiful woman.
When you look at her, you're like, oh, she's a really, really beautiful person. Yes. Then you get the accent, right? And we like the accent.
Yeah.
I like a Spanish accent. I like an English accent.
Yeah, I dated really beautiful girls, and Beth, like the thing for me, I mean, we can get into it, but like Beth and I have been married twice. And okay. Yeah. So Beth is everything that I ever wanted, and everything that like makes me better. And I recognized it like super early, but when you're young and juvenile, you can't put like a lot of detail to what that means. You're just like, I am better when I'm around you. Yeah. But you don't really know why. But as I've matured through my life, I know exactly those details of why, she makes me better. But that's what it was for me, because like she's beautiful for sure. But what makes Beth special is like who she is. Yeah. She's an incredible person. Easily the most incredible person I've ever met. I know you kind of have to say that because it's your spouse, but for me, dude, like I mean it.
No, you can tell you mean it. For sure. You can actually tell when guys don't mean it, and you're like, good luck.
Yeah. And I'm sure you feel like you don't stay with a person, and you don't marry a person twice when you know all the good, bad, and indifferent about somebody. Yeah. If you don't feel that way. Yeah. Too. And so, anyways, yeah.
So let's jump into it, man. What happened? How'd you guys get back?
So we got married. We were young. I was 24. She was 22. I was going into my senior year of college football. And at that point, like, it was selfish zone. And as a 24-year-old athlete, all I could really think about at that frame was myself. Like NFL dreams, all that stuff. And her father had just left her family at that time, and I had some stuff I had to work through with my family, and it was a tornado of like just outside stuff that should have been dealt with and never was.
Yeah.
So ultimately got to a point where this, all those things at once kind of were happening. And it was kind of like we were both, she was just like, I need to get out of here. Like I feel like Brad's going to end up, leaving me when I'm older. His family's so intrusive. I'm not used to this. And this is like totally invading our space. And I was kind of a selfish, 24-year-old dude. And I was just kind of like, okay, whatever, kind of thing. And then it happened. And luckily that happened. Like we look back and like we talk about it at times, and we've talked to people who have been through divorce or like going through divorce, and don't recommend. The first thing is like, don't recommend unless you go through your own discovery and self process of healing yourself to get back with the same person, unless it's like those two people are doing it separate. And then when you get back, those new two people should be together. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so for us, we went through like our own journey. So I dated other people. She dated other people. Multiple people. We were going through our own kind of like healing process, and we look at it as such a blessing now. Thank goodness we found it early enough with therapy and going through like our own individual therapy. And then we did couples therapy prior to us getting back together, like getting married. But man, like I dated people. I thought, I had moved on, she had moved on. And then ultimately we just got pulled. It was weird. All the good parts of what we had originally and like the things that we loved about each other were still there. And then all the bullshit, I'll call it, was just either made aware, like process and real strong accountability to those things, or they had healed. And so when I would have to ask her, like, who made the first kind of thing. It was because we had cut off even communication, like any type of communication. It was we're kind of like casual at the point. Like she'd be doing something to be like, you'd like a photo or something. You know what I mean? Like, I'm happy for you. Like you're happy. Yeah. Kind of thing. And
how long were you guys married for before you got divorced?
9 months. So it wasn't that long.
Real quick. Yeah.
9 months. And then we were divorced for almost like 2 years, I think, before we got remarried. And then when we decided that we wanted to be together, before that next step, it was like, we've got to go through couples therapy. Because part of our issue is, I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this, is issues in a relationship arise when there is poor communication. So we all have things that we are improving or making better, but the real like resistance is when we're not congruent with each other. And most of that's coming from poor communication skills or the inability to lean in and listen and learn and, communicate through. And that was our problem. Like neither of us could communicate to the other person's ears, kind of thing. You know what I mean? So we went through that as a couple. Like, how do we communicate effectively? How do we set strong boundaries in our relationship and things to make sure that all the great parts of why we love each other can flourish while it's like insulated. And we went through that for a good amount of time. And then when we were ready, like we were like, man, we're going to do this. Like I cannot spend life without you, kind of thing. We eloped and we got married in San Diego on a gazebo. There's 4 people there. And man, like a million times better wedding than our first one, with all the hoopla and like Mormon, hoopla that goes with it, and your grandma's cousin's neighbors showing up, and you got the potlucks everywhere, and everyone's like, you're just shaking everyone's hand, and you're doing the thank yous. It was just me and her and like 2 people that we cared about, and it was super special. And then from there, no kids, so we, I think a few years later we had Lydia, our oldest, who's 9. And the rest is history. Yeah.
Nice. So what do you think brought you guys back together?
What what I know now versus I think at the time is because she's the most incredible person I've ever met. that's part of it. But another part of it is we tend to we tend to gravitate to people a lot of the times who either have similarities or a strength of something that's a weakness. Because we're pulled to that because it's very either familiar or it's like it's motivating.
Yeah,
you're like, wow, I'd love to make this piece of me stronger. And subconsciously, the person we marry tends to be stronger. Tends, not all the time, may or may not. Tends to be stronger at the things that we're not really strong at. And so ultimately, we kind of like marry our unconscious.
Right.
In a way. And with Beth, like she's all the best parts of the things that I'm not great at. And so that's what makes me, I mean, we could go down a rabbit hole on this one, but like the way that I view it is she makes me my fullest self. And I feel like I bring that out of her too.
Yeah.
And so the ability to do that together, it's why that it's like the magnetism is so high and it's why we got pulled back to each other.
Yeah.
Because I think there's so many great people out in this world, and there's so many great people that you can have flourishing and romantic and beautiful relationships with, for sure. But for me, it might sound like uber romantic or whatever, but in the midst of the dating and the girls and the relationships and the friendships and the like acquaintances, there's just always been this magnetism to Beth where like I could not even resist if I tried kind of thing.
Do you think the divorce helped you guys be a stronger couple, or if you were to do it again, would you fix communication quicker?
I think it could have gotten fixed, but I live life without regrets in any means in this point in my life. And that learning lesson I look as a blessing to have learned the things that we as a couple learned that early that sometimes may take a couple 10, 20, 30 years to get to. I'm not saying that our marriage is perfect and like better than anyone. What I'm saying is for us to learn those things that were an issue for us early, like that early and that rapid and that intense has become such a blessing like later in our life. And honestly, it helps us communicate with our kids too. Like how we raise our kids, I think for our parents is kind of tough. Honestly, but the way that we do it is we want our children to see how real their parents are, both the things that we do well, the things that we thrive in, the things that we're struggling in, and the things that like we're working on, you know, and we communicate that with our kids. Where before with Beth and I think that we were so scared to show any vulnerability in our communication that like, a lot of men can relate to this, but you kind of get tired of wearing a mask, man. Mm-hmm. You get tired of like, you know, I can't do this well. Like we're scared to even say that to our spouse because we got to be, you know, Mr. Perfect here. But vice versa for our you know, the females is to be vulnerable and feel safe enough to be like, I'm really struggling at this. I think this, that, or the other, and to like be able to do that. We were forced to do that at an early age. And those, you know, I think those therapy sessions for her individually, like we've talked about multiple times, it helped her so much. And mine too, just my own stuff that I was working through. But as a couple, like having someone play intermediary where we could communicate something and both of us go, I don't know how to fix this. And have a third person go, well, have you considered this? Have you considered that? And then you go, oh my gosh, no. Like to get that's so valuable. And then walk through what that thing is to have like good skills to do it. I would encourage people to do that if they're even if they're even like thinking about like, I wonder if this could like, just do it. Cause almost every time it's going to be helpful in your relationship.
What do you think the key is to like, like keep on adding to your relationship, right? Cause now you guys, how long you guys been married now?
Oh, altogether, like 13 years almost.
13 years, yeah. And so I see a lot of guys, right? I mean, like in my men's group, you know, some guys are struggling in their marriage, some guys not. I don't think a lot of people know what to do. Mm-hmm. Communication, absolutely, right? I mean, I don't know, it's kind of like a no-brainer. And you don't know it till you start doing it, and you're like, oh, why don't I just tell her the truth? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like just tell her how I really feel. And because if they really love you and they want to support you, and then it actually just cracks the door for them to start telling you the truth and kind of goes back and forth. Right. But
yeah,
like I look at my wife and we have a really good relationship, right? Really good marriage. And I feel like we're just always pushing forward. And I'm kind of like, man, how do I make this better? How do I make this better? And a lot of the times I'm like, I have no idea. Like I really don't. I have no idea how to make this better. So I guess I'll just wait for an opportunity to knock, right? And then I'll try and pick it up. But
it's a good question. I think that so I like the part that we're both moving forward together. I think that is a continuous motor that should always happen. Like the alignment of we are moving this direction is huge. So that's part of it. Yeah. But also, one of my buddies is very good at this, and he coaches men specifically on these things. But I'll summarize it, and shout out to Keith Yackey. He's an amazing person. But to be the best version of yourself individually is key too. And so when we think of like when we first met, when you first met your spouse, what was that thing? Most of the times those great things or those really amazing things that initially made you attracted to the person don't always go away, but some of them can go dormant, right? So it's almost like it's an obligation for us individually to be at least pursuing the best version of ourselves. I'm not saying you got to be perfect in each step of the way. What you have to do is you have to have these self-driven actualities to be the most attractive version of yourself. And I'm not saying just physically, but like, if you're not moving forward for yourself, it becomes a little bit unattractive, on either side. So part of it's like, hey, we are going this direction, and it may be financial goals, and maybe, we're going to these locations. We want to experience these things together. We want these things for our family. We want these things for each other, those things. But it's also like, I'm going this way too for myself. Like these are the things I'm working on. And some of them may be attractive and some of them may not. But like the fact that you're doing them for yourself, I think is attractive. Like for instance, I would have never thought that I would have gotten to like jiu-jitsu. I thought it was like the lamest thing when I would observe it. And then now I'm like addicted like it's heroin. And I do it almost every day. For Beth, she thinks that's the stupidest thing ever. And that's okay. But like the fact that I do that, like that I'm actualizing myself, it's part of the physical realm that I think, even though she doesn't like it, she likes the things that come from it. Right. I'm a better dad. I'm a better friend. I'm a better person. Right. So all those things that jiu-jitsu gives me, then therefore gives her a better version of myself too. Even though she's like, that's so lame. You know what I mean? So you may have things that like you're not sharing the same passion on, but the fact that you do them to make you better is important. And that's what like we communicate a lot. Like our thing is right now is, kind of what level of effort can you give like in the moments. We've got 3 young kids under the age of 9. Beth's got a career. I got a career. I've got a new business. There's a lot going on. We have our own individual kind of like personal goals too. And some days it's like, I don't have 100%, but it's like being able to express that and being like, today I don't have 100%, but I'm working on my shit. Like I'm not asking you to take it on. Yeah. Like I'm not saying like a baby me or whatever. Or I'm like a weaker version of a man. It's just like, I'm vulnerable here. Like I'm tired, I'm a little distracted, whatever. Express that. And being able to like feel comfortable enough to just express that to her, man, she's so good at like, I got you, for the next 24 hours kind of thing. And I do my best to do the same for her. And sometimes, we fall a little short, but like the communication of that I think is key. Because we're not at 100% all the time. Yeah. But a marriage, like a strong marriage, in my opinion, are 2 people trying to give more than when the other person cannot give that much. Yeah. And if you show up like that, you're always going to move forward together.
Yeah. Yeah. And plus I think it's good to be strong for you. I think what you said is actually a really good point, right? Like you have to constantly take care of yourself first, right? there's kind of this thought out there when people go, well, I gotta, God's number one, and then my wife, and then my kids, and then me, and it's like, no, you got to be number one always. Because if you're not taking care of yourself, you can't take care of other people. It's the same thing, when the oxygen mask comes down in a plane, like there's a reason they yell at us every freaking plane flight. Put it on yourself first, and then you can actually help people. And I think a lot of that comes down to mental health. Like you can't be just constantly dealing with crap in your head and not getting that out there and getting it gone out of your body, right? And then starting to really focus on positive stuff. Because I've noticed with my wife, like when I'm strong or when I need her to be strong, like if you're 80% of the time pretty strong, most of the time you're hitting together strong, and then you can lean on the other person, and that's your person.
Exactly.
It's like that ultimate trust there, and also even with vulnerability, right? Like vulnerability is such a two-edged sword, right? With your spouse, because you can't be weak to your spouse, especially being a man, right?
Well, let's go down this.
Yeah.
This is an interesting one because like vulnerability intrinsically isn't weak, but continue on.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I think. It's not like go complain to your wife about all your problems, right? It's more like, hey, I'm dealing with some stuff. It's hard on me. This is my plan. Like, advise me a little bit. I trust you to advise me. You know what I mean? Like that. To me, that's more the attitude that like that vulnerability needs to be. I feel like when guys feel like they're vulnerable, they go dump all their shit on their wife, and it's like, dude, half that stuff you should have just dumped, in your own head, and then go to her and same thing with her, right? When you have another spouse or a wife that's just dumping her crap on you, it's like, oh, my friend Melinda, blah, blah, blah. It's like, who cares? Go call one of your other friends and tell her about Melinda. That's not my deal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's not to be mean, right? But it's almost to keep both of your relationships pure with each other, I think, or some sort of I don't know, you got to keep that trust there. Because I think with women especially, if they start viewing you as weak-minded, you're gonna have a long way to come back on that. Do you ever feel like that? You ever see that happen with people?
I think that, like, for me, the real strong difference between being like, how do I put this? Being weak and like vulnerable. I think we've had all of us have weak moments.
Absolutely.
Right. If someone has not had a weak moment, like, God bless you. Like, I would love to pick your brain and hear how you did that.
Yeah.
Right. And if you're like an older, person like our generation or something, but we all have weak moments, but true vulnerability is not weak at all. What it is it's courageous, because courage in itself, like that label, courage, is literally the act of like faith. It's an action in the not knowing.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you don't know the outcome. Courageous is stepping forward in the unknown, right? So when you're vulnerable, you're like, hey, I'm dealing with this, courageous. And I think that women intrinsically respond to that. I'm dealing with this. But like, to your point, the mentally strong part is this part where the weakness and the vulnerability kind of diverge. I'm trying to figure this out. I have these things, actionably, this is what I'm doing. And what you said, I'm looking for some advice here. That's why I'm coming to you.
Yeah.
Like, what am I missing on this part?
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest part of that. I think that at times though, like being emotionally vulnerable too is okay.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like shit. Like, I don't feel like I'm measuring up to my standards, not like your standards, because that's kind of weak.
Yeah.
It's like my own standard. Like, I feel like I'm not coming through. That's okay too. But a weaknesses is like when you recognize that and you don't have any desire, like true desire, to step forward to change.
Yeah.
If you're just living there, if you're just living in that vulnerability constantly and it doesn't change, I think that's when women go,
oh boy.
Well, you're now I have to be way too, masculine on this part.
Yeah.
Right. And that can bring some incongruence.
And I think for me too, like while we're sitting here talking about this, I'm thinking it's like sometimes I don't know, once a month, maybe twice a month, I'll text my wife and be like, hey, it's been a day. You know what I mean? I just need you to cuddle me all night and let's watch a movie or something. You know what I mean? It's not like, I just want to feel your love on me for a minute. You know what I mean? Yeah. And then tomorrow I'll get up and do the same shit I did yesterday.
Yeah. And I'll be like,
yeah.
I think yes, it's like, and I do that too. Cause I'm a touch tactile person. I'll be like, hey, I just need a big hug. Tomorrow I'll be okay. But just like right now, like, need a big hug. Nothing wrong with that.
And you're the only one that can deliver it. So.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I just think marriage is such a beautiful thing, you know?
Well, that's the part, like, as I've come into this concept of like, you do marry your unconscious, like, here's the thing that I'm playing with right now. If we want to get in this part, this is really interesting because this is me being vulnerable too. When Beth gets upset, like if her reaction is one of like resistance, upset, like not in alignment with what's happening or whatever, I'm now going, well, how did I create this?
Yeah.
Like, when did I decide to create this experience? Like that full accountability of it. And man, I've had a lot of learnings from just doing that in the last 6 months. Cause this is a concept that I've learned in the last year with one of my mentors and things like that. So when it comes up in my relationship, I do it in like most of my life. It's kind of easier, but in a relationship it's really emotionally charging, right? Cause it's a person you feel you're most vulnerable with, you're most love with, right? So to have that type of accountability going on for me when it's like she's charged, and I go, when did I decide to create this, environment in my head? The amount of learning that I get from it has been incredible. Instead, I would be like, our natural instinct is to close, like, or man, like, what's wrong with you? Like,
right.
Would you have a hard day? Instead, now I'm going, how did I create this? Like, when did I decide to create this? And usually I can get the answers like, well, you know what? You didn't pick up the trash when you said you were going to pick up the trash.
Yeah.
10
times in a row.
And usually it's something, usually it's something stupid. And, Keith talks about this too, is like, if you can't be accountable to yourself or honest with yourself, like and keep your own commitments to yourself, like you're not going to really be able to replicate that with your spouse too.
Yeah. It's funny you say that because I've never thought of it that way, but and I like.
It's an interesting concept, right?
Yeah, but I do this thing like, and we rarely fight, really, honestly. Maybe every couple months, it'll be something. Something boils up or whatever, right? And she's coming at me or I'm coming at her or whatever. We're both like, I joke with people like, most people give us, oh, you guys are fun, and I'm like, yeah, but we are stubborn as hell. If you ever see us fight, it is like rock in a hard place, right? Just boom. And my point with that though is like when we do fight, I should ask myself that at the very beginning, because I actually ask myself that after it's over.
Right.
And that's what softens me. When I'm like, okay, why is she mad at me? She loves the death out of me. She freaking, worships the ground I walk on sometimes, right? Like she tells me how much I'm just her person, I'm best friend, all this stuff. And then I start, as I'm coming down off the serotonin dump or whatever, right? I'm like, dude, why are you a dick? You know what I mean? Let's just say you're sorry and figure out what's wrong with her. You're like, no, you did this, and we kind of start scratching at each other. And it's like, I like that a lot. I think if you can make that automatic where it's okay, right as you don't even listen to her, right? Just, she's mad at you. Okay. What did I do that made her mad? And then just start apologizing for it and go into it. Yeah. I think it's a great, great principle.
I think for me, where I had to get to a point where I could ask myself that is to not feel bad about the question.
Yeah.
Because if you go when I'm literally, Brad, like blah blah, whatever. Maybe she's upset, and it's like, well, when did I decide this? Before it would have been like, you're such a piece of shit. Like, why did you do this? Right? That's a different thing than like, when did I decide this? It's almost like a very loving, like accountability, actionable way to process life. And now being in like that kind of energy with it, I can get through it quicker. And there are times like the trash, the trash one's funny. Like Beth is like serial killer, American Psycho, clean, like on stuff, right? And I grew up in a home, and it's not an excuse, but I grew up in a home that would like, cluttery at times. And it's one of my biggest weaknesses that I'm working on is like physical organization of stuff. Like usually, like I'm very easy, like I can operate in chaos. She needs everything organized and structured. Yeah. So let's say, the kitchen has like a couple dishes in the sink, and maybe, a couple of kids' toys on the kitchen counter. Like for her, it feels overwhelming. For me, it's like a Tuesday. Yeah. You know what I mean? And she'd be like, dude, you said, like, can you pick up that stuff? And I'd be like, so now I'll like kind of joke, like make sure the energy's good. And I'll be like, man, I really love leaving out the shit, don't I? And she'll like chuckle or whatever. Yeah. But then I'm like, well, when did I decide this? Well, usually the answer is like, I'm not putting Beth first, which is interesting. Yeah. Because when we do have to put ourselves first, or we don't show up full capacity. If we put ourselves last, our ability is like this, right? So usually learning is like, well, I didn't show up for Beth. Like usually that, like I need to show up for Beth more. What's the answer? So what do I want instead? Well, I got to show better for myself because something else is lacking. You know what I mean? And usually I can figure out what that is quicker. Where before, like if it was more of a self-deprecating, like, you're such a piece of shit. Why don't you do this? Blah, blah, blah. It would be more of a drag that emotion and then learn it maybe 2 weeks later. Now it's like rapid and quick and effortless to like figure out what the thing is. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Oh yeah. And that's the worst part, right? You're in a dark room shooting at a target you can't see. It's like, what are you bad at?
You know, and that's a deep one too, man. Like midlife crisis is a really interesting thing.
Yeah. Have you hit yours yet?
Oh yeah. 34. I wouldn't, and now I don't even call it a midlife crisis. I think it's literally a second birth.
Yeah.
Is like the way that I look at it, because we're born as who we are. And then we learn a way to operate through the reality. Mm-hmm. And then at some point you get tired of that.
Yeah.
Because something went haywire in parts of you, in your experience. And you're like, I need change. But what is it? And so when you said that part where it's like you're shooting in the dark, that's usually when it comes, is like you're at a point of your life where you feel like the darkness is there.
Yeah.
And you're like, I have no answers. And usually that's where like men especially get into deep depression, deep in themselves in the darkness, because the change, they can't see any type of light. And I think that luckily there are, like your guys' group, like with Watt, like stuff like that is so pivotal for guys to even see, like even if they don't do it, to be able to have that stuff in the open more.
Yeah.
To show what like the vulnerability with strength side versus the vulnerability with weakness, right? Which is where I think in society people are still figuring this out. Like do you have to be this, hardcore asshole, or am I going to be this small little weak boy, right? Like they think there's only those two spectrums, and in reality, now it's becoming more mainstream to really understand what like strength and vulnerability looks like that they can observe. Well,
I think some of the differences there is also self-awareness, right?
Totally.
Like it's amazing when people are just not self-aware. I'm always like, dude. Yeah. Like I led one of the calls a couple of weeks ago, right? And we were going over stuff like brush your teeth, and I was like, dude, find a cologne, guys. Yeah. Hit yourself with cologne every day. Like you want to show up in this world, because a lot of men's groups, this is one of the things that drives me nuts. It's really easy to fall into the financial goals, right? I'm going to build a business. I'm going to make $1 million. Mm-hmm. Like that is so easy to do. Let's fix you. Raise your hand if you think you're the best dad on the planet. Honestly, oh, look at that. No one raised their hands. What the hell? That's what matters, Yeah. And we go into these things, and then like I feel like guys, you can almost see them like becoming more self-aware. Like, oh yeah, The thing that spurred it was kind of funny. I was at a lunch, a business lunch, right? Uh-huh. There was a broker that set me up between me and a software company that they're trying to get us to invest in them, right?
Okay.
And we're at this lunch, dude, and this guy is like eating these wings, dude, and just like they're all over his face, and he's asking the waitress for more napkins, and do you have any wet napkins and all this stuff, and I'm just like looking at him, and I'm like this close to dismissing him, right? Which would have been a little bit of a power move, but I'm almost like, I'm a child. You're distracting me so bad, dude. I don't even know what we're talking about anymore because you're slopping these wings all over your face. And so I just started like writing down things, right? I was texting Jimmy right after this thing. I'm like, dude, if I'm in another meeting with a guy, because I'm like, don't go to a business meeting and eat something that's loud and obnoxious. You don't get ribs. Yeah. You don't get chicken wings, dude. You get like something you can just take little small bites of. And I told the guys in the call, I was like, even if you have to go grab Wendy's after and that costs you $150 for two of you, who cares?
Good advice.
Keep your mind on the prize, right?
Yeah.
And I really like realize it's just a lot of self-awareness. And you can't understand people's perspective, I don't think, unless you really understand your perspective first. Mm-hmm. And then get into that and go, okay, well, she's mad at me because of this, or he's mad at me because of this, or I just can't make this relationship work. Why can't I? I think you got to reflect back in first. And that's exactly what you're saying, where it's like, okay, what did I do to make this happen? Instead of being like, oh, she's just mad again. And that's kind of like separating the wheat from the tares there a little bit. The people that can figure that out normally are pretty successful, and the guys that just can never figure it out, it's like, well, hopefully there's another life.
Yeah.
I get to try this again.
Yeah. It's like the friend that like always dates the crazy chick.
Right.
Like you could place the friend in different locations. I mean, shit, you could send him, like we were talking about earlier, like it feels really far away from home. You could send him to Scotland.
Right.
You might still find the crazy chick.
Oh, they will.
And the question is it the crazy chicks flop? Like, is it the crazy chicks or is it you? You know what I mean?
Or maybe they make them a crazy chick.
Could be.
Stop saying that way to her. You know what I mean?
Right. And that's a really that's good advice though. Like I think that again, back to the vulnerability and strength and vulnerability is like men typically they want to feel like they're building something, like building to accomplish something, right? That's like part of the masculine. They want to feel safe in their vulnerability. And they just want to be loved, right?
Yep.
And I think what the part though that I think that a lot of these things are changing is they also need a group of peers, right? That you roll with, right? I think that was more common for the generations before to have things that they could get those peer groups in. And as society has gotten way more individualized and we've gotten separated, I mean, COVID's a great example of like how separated we are in society. I think that fourth element is a part that, like things like WAT are great for getting dudes to just have that. But the other three things are really important too, because there's no chance those guys that are listening to the advice from you on that call, like coaching them through, there's no chance some random dude's just going to be like, well, screw that guy, but he does this, that, and the other. Like, he's just saying that, but you know what I mean? Yeah. Instead, it's like, Mark's imperfect, but he's going forward.
Yeah. And
I am safe enough in this location that I can listen to that and actually, to the self-awareness part, be like, yeah, I'm safe enough with myself and my own vulnerability, and I'm safe enough with Mark and my own vulnerability because I know he gives a shit about me.
Yeah.
That I can be like, yeah, I probably shouldn't eat the wings in front of people at a business meeting. And that's interesting. You said that because I did that a month ago, kind of thing. No, I'm not saying me, but like I'm thinking like someone thinking through this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think that that's changing. Like we're seeing that change dramatically. So those four elements can just exist. Like I get a lot of my stuff where I feel like I can lead and be led because I think high achieving, high driven people are great at being led and they're great at leading.
Yeah.
Both of those things. Like I don't even think that you can lead if you don't know how to be led. Like I think it's impossible.
Dude, I agree 100%.
And I get it from my jiu-jitsu environment. I get it from just the friendship groups that I have and the men that I trust. But like if I do an forensic audit on my friendships and my relationships, the ones that are really close to me, like inside my bubble, all of them I would call up in the middle of the night and be like, I'm stuck.
Yeah.
And all of them would give me something that I know could help me get unstuck. Like that's what's important for me in a relationship. Has nothing to do with like financial transaction. Has everything to do with if it's in alignment with where my direction is going forward. If they can, regardless of the money or the whatever, the status, if they can give me the unstuck and I can do it for them. Like that's all that matters to me. And I audit that a lot, and sometimes there's some people that, I put a little more distance on and love them from a little bit more afar. And then there's others I bring in closer because I'm like, gosh, damn it. Like this person gets what's going on, is going in a similar direction. And I know that I can do the help me get unstuck here part.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
It's a good way. It's good qualities to build your tribe around. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's also hard to depend on people that don't get it. It's hard to get advice from people that just don't understand, not self-aware. But anyway, switching gears a little bit.
Yeah, dude. So
tell me about your, I don't know what you want to call it, your weight loss transformation or. So first off, so you and my friends, Nick, you guys have a business together. Let's talk about that first and we'll talk about your body transformation.
Okay. Yeah. So Nick, well, I don't think I can talk about either without the other. The latter without the first. Yeah. So before I met Nick, I think my transformation physically was more of an internal transformation first. I played ball at Utah, and during that time I got a psoas abscess, which is just basically staph infection in your psoas. About a liter of fluid, and we were preparing to play Michigan. It was my first year starting as a sophomore. We're about to go off, and every single day, my hip just gets hiked up higher and higher. And most guys who've been a competitive athlete, like they just deal through stuff. You wrap it, you tape it, whatever. Mm-hmm. And I just kept wrapping, my strained hip flexor, and ultimately, we thought that I had torn my hip, and so I thought that I would just get it fixed at the end of the season. But it got to the point where I'm just throwing up bile all through the night. Call my head doctor, and they rushed me in. Long story short, they're admitting me for emergency surgery to basically save my life, because if I would have waited, I would have gone septic and died.
Yeah.
And
was that here in Utah?
Here in Utah,
okay.
at the U. And so, I have emergency surgery to clear it all out, about a liter of fluid. They put a PICC line, goes into my heart. I lose 30 pounds. And I'm like at the bottom of the barrel. And it was my first kind of bout with depression. Never really dealt with it. But as you do as an athlete, you just kind of grind through, gain the weight back, get prepared, go to the Sugar Bowl, whatever. Didn't have a great season. It just was hampered by what that was. Built my career back, but I never fixed my mental health. Never fixed the way that I ate, because it was always just calories, just to I played tight end, so I had to maintain a certain weight. And it was really poor strategy. I knew what I needed to do, but I didn't really do it. It was just like Little Caesars, Wendy's, stuff like that. And then my senior year, I didn't really fix my health and dislocated my shoulder going into my senior season. Had a decent junior season, but really prepared for the senior season to go to the NFL, like all that stuff. Had a decent senior season, but I just kept dislocating my shoulder. I never was healthy. Went through my divorce with Beth. And so from that time, just a lot of my body was a mess, both from my mind and just my overall body. I gained a lot of weight. For me, I was at 290 at the top end after our divorce. Then I lost all the weight, but I did it in a way that's like pretty hardcore. I worked out 7 days a week, ate really probably poorly in the opposite direction, like rice and a piece of chicken every day. Built a career, lost all the weight. And then I get remarried, and then life took over. And I went back to just kind of poor strategies. Mm-hmm. Work out 6 days a week, eat relatively decent, but not really. And got heavy again, but lost a lot of what made me an athlete in my teenage years. And there was a noticeable difference, to the point where I'm having a panic attack at 34. I'm on all fours. My body's a mess. My parasympathetic nervous system's just shot. And that was the pivotal point for me to go, I'm out of shape, but I'm out of shape in my mind. I got to figure this out. Went through a whole, we just talked about parts of this, but went through a rebirth, I'll call it, a new life in my mind. But at the same time, I wanted to fix what was going on in my body. And so I, at the time, had built a career in healthcare and spent time in orthopedics, interventional radiology, which is kind of how the arteries and the vascular system works, and a lot of different therapies that go through that. Spent time in cancer, breast cancer. And so I've consulted with many physicians on the way that they should make their way that they do medicine better for years and years and years. And there are pieces of access to information that I would just start asking about and talking about and getting curious about. And during that time, Nick and I became good friends through Beth. So Beth actually worked with Nick. Yeah. And that's how Nick and I met. And, Nick and I got really close. And I remember, I had parts of this figured out, and then we started talking about, pieces of this. And I would call myself kind of like the experimental guinea pig for about a couple of years. So I'm fixing my metabolic health. I'm getting dialed into that piece of it, but I'm also trying to figure out what did I screw up the 34 years prior, right, over that had compounded. And by that discovery, it was slowly just trying to intervene, reverse, or mitigate the problems that got to a certain point that may be hard to reverse, but mitigate around it because of the way that I treated my body. And then that led to about a year and a half, and I just started dropping the weight, the bad weight, the weight that was around, the fat that stores around your organs, the things like that, getting my energy levels up to where I felt like I was Like, I don't know if you remember when you're 18, you go out with your buddies all night, you can hang out all night. And then the next day, cause you were an athlete, like in college, like next day you could go to practice and be okay.
Yeah.
You know, you think about that at like 34, you're like, gosh, if I did that, I'd be down for like 2 days.
Right.
Before I even so I got my energy levels back and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I get how this works and put it together. And then Nick and I were discussing, how can we replicate this for people? Like, how can we do this over and over again? And Nick, as you know, is one of the world's, most renowned plastic surgeons, and he specializes in body transformation. And he's one of the best. I mean, he speaks on multiple panels, and he is a sought after physician. But also, the part of that body transformation that he does as an artist, he knows the science of it as well. So luckily for me, I have the balance of what I see and what I've consulted on from my end for physicians. And here's Nick, trained physician, one of the best MDs in the country. And we're having these open dialogues that are honest, right? A lot of times these physicians don't want to have honest conversation on pieces of this. And we're getting to the bottom of like, oh my gosh, we can actually put this together for people. And originally it was going to be like more of a clinic, and where we could have parts of the mental health part that we could play into that and give some dynamics that would make men feel comfortable. And I think eventually we'll get there for more clinic and brick and mortar stuff. But that's where it led to launching Elevation, which we can take a person, figure out what's going on, do a forensic audit on like what's going on with you, and actually intervene and create protocols that will intervene on what's going on with you. Work that through over a period of time and see change, measure change with you as a work with process, instead of what exists today, which is a very reactionary, very symptom driven. Thank God we have the Western machine. If you break your leg, best place to be in the world is in the United States to go have a broken leg fixed. Yeah. You have a heart attack, you want to have a cardiologist to go, deal with that. But what we do very poorly in the United States is prevent most of what exists today as the top reasons for disease and illness that kill millions of people. And that's what Nick and I wanted to change, is be a part of the change in that. And that's our mission, is to really intervene and help people be an active participant in their own health to eliminate down the road a lot of what exists for people at the end of it. Not knowing, they don't know about it.
There must be a big education piece, right, for your clients?
Parts of it, but we try to make it digestible too. That's what's cool about it, is the way that our process works and the things that we're doing for them. It can be a lot. It can definitely be a lot. We know what we're doing, and they're going like, we trust that what this is and how we'll talk to this will work. But when we make it digestible, it's, hey, these are the main points for you. So instead of having to talk through all of it, like here's what we're looking at, we go, here's what showed up for you. And then we can go hyper focus on those parts and then intervene on the parts that are applicable to you, and not have to really educate on the other parts that just they're not like a red flag or a yellow flag kind of thing for you. They're just, hey, you're doing really well in these parts. Let's focus on the parts that we want to change.
So are your clients, they're all progressing?
Yeah. Most of them are getting, so we do three things. We want to catch things that we can intervene on quick. We want to find things that we know you should do and encourage you to do them with what we can offer. And then there are goal-based things. So some people are like, hey, I'm doing X, Y, Z. I want to be prepared for that. Like I want to lose weight. I want to slim down or cut down. We can do some of those goal-based therapies with that. There are other things like, hey, I'm preparing for a triathlon, and I'm a competitive, person. So we can apply things that can help with that preparation to compete at a higher level. There are certain therapies you can leverage to help with that for a goal. So those are the things that, from like, are they having good results from it? Those play into kind of the goals part, but the shoulds part, immediately we can get strong intervention. I got friends, that I won't say names, obviously by law, that we've caught some things pretty early that are things, if they didn't catch down the road, would show up 1,000% and catch them. But now we can actually be a work with situation to help them through that so they can prepare for down the road and hopefully not have that type of result, in 20 years kind of thing.
Oh. Yeah, I think what you guys are doing, there's a couple companies out there doing, different things all over the country, probably the world, but like it is the worst thing about the American health system. We do not prevent anything. No. It's always just, fix, prescribe.
Mm-hmm.
And, we're kind of a fat country.
Yeah.
Are we the fattest country?
Oh, by far. Yeah.
I was going to say, like,
the obesity epidemic is the biggest thing that's hurting us in this country.
Yeah.
And it's the thing that costs us the most in our healthcare system.
Yeah. I feel like everywhere I go, man, it's just huge people though. Not like a little chubby or whatever, because, you don't need to be, rock hard abs all the time. But like, my gosh, dude, there's some big freaking people out there.
Totally. And I think that, for a lot of us, we overestimate what our natural weight should be. I think that, like right now I have my own specific goals that I want to do, in my, late 30s and going into my early 40s that will change in time. Mm-hmm. But I want to maintain a certain top end of my weight, but I won't for the rest of my life. But right now it's a weight that I do want to maintain. I think for a lot of people, we overestimate what that weight is. Yeah. And what's interesting is when you go through kind of a, for years, for me, I'm 6'4". I thought my natural weight as like an athlete was like 250. It's really not. Probably my natural weight is between 225 and 232 for me as an athlete, compete, like trying to do jiu-jitsu and compete in that.
Yeah.
To maintain the muscle mass and the strength and et cetera, endurance. But over time, as I get older, I'm going to have that weight keep coming down.
So let's talk about jiu-jitsu for a quick second.
Yeah.
Because I own a gi, brand new.
Let's go.
Let's do. I'm actually I'm going to start going to Crown at noon, because no one else does it at noon, and I need to break my day up. I sit for 8 hours sometimes. Hell, sometimes I'll sit for 12 hours. And I thought, I'm going to go do jiu-jitsu. But the last 2 times I've done it, man, it's really fun. Mm-hmm. I mean, tore me apart, right? I was with all my black belt buddies down in one in Lehigh, over at Roots.
Yeah.
And dude, I am the hardest thing with there. It's not that I'm a little out of shape. It is that I am not flexible. Like how do you do your flexibility with jiu-jitsu?
Yeah, I've changed up the way that I work out too. That's an interesting one. So I don't like, man, I'm sure you can relate, like the way that you strength train for football. Oh, football, yeah. It's evolved a lot more, but those compound lifts, some of them are applicable, like a deadlift can be applicable from the ground, mm-hmm. but like a back squat sometimes isn't that applicable.
Yeah.
We do a lot of like Bulgarian squats, single leg things. I've transitioned to that. I've done a lot of things to do like Zercher squats. I don't know if you
I don't even know what that is.
But it's basically you got the barbell in front of you by your elbows, and you're doing a squat, almost like a front squat, but you're holding it like this.
Okay. And
so I've changed up the way that I strength train with jiu-jitsu because of the mobility thing. And when I started a year ago, I same thing that you're going through is what I recognize is, in certain positions, I'd be very dominant, like, because the structure of my body and my muscles and my strength was conducive to that position. Yeah. But then I would get put in a position and I'm like a wet noodle in this position because of my inability to have any type of applicable strength here. Yeah. So it's a self-discovery part. I got a good buddy, actually, shout out to Ty Horn, mm-hmm. who, he wrote me a program just recently because I'm just changing up the way that I want to look at it. From a strength and jiu-jitsu strength perspective. But Ty played right tackle, I believe, at TCU, but when I was playing at Utah.
Oh, nice.
And the mecca of jiu-jitsu right now is in Austin, Texas. You got 2 teams. You've got the New Wave crew, and then you've got the B team. And all those guys came from the same Renzo Gracie line in New York, and they're all Danaher kind of elite dudes that had some drama and split up. That's the short version. So all these top competitors are there, and Ty will go down and compete with or train with the New Wave guys. So he's down there with Gordon Ryan. He'll train with Gordon Ryan. Big Dan's down there. some of the top guys, bigger guys too, that train. And when you see Ty move, like it's insane, dude. He's 295, 6'5", one of the strongest dudes out there, but he moves with extreme flexibility. And so he's a guy that, if you're a bigger jiu-jitsu guy, like he's a guy that you want to connect with that can help you out a big time with that. I'll pass you on though.
Yeah, pass me on.
I got a couple, stronger dudes that are like, how do I get this applicable to move with my jiu-jitsu? Right. And he's helping them out a ton. Yeah,
it's hard. I'll tell you, it was funny. So our last one event, we did like, this military stuff, like POW stuff. But the day before we went and did UFC training or whatever you want to call it, right? At some gym up in like Mill Creek or something. And it was funny because Jimmy's like, all right, guys, all I ask is that you go all out, right? And I was just like, oh, you don't even need to ask. Like, I'm going to go all out in this. So we were going like 1 minute, 1 minute, 1 minute, 1 minute, right? And then we went for 2 minutes to 2 minute, and holy shit, dude.
Yeah.
I went 100% the entire, and everyone did. Like, everyone was going crazy until the last 8 seconds of the final match, dude. I was just, the guy was on top of me. My arm was stretched out. He kind of had me, but didn't quite have me yet. The guy's like, what would you do if you were being raped? And I was just sitting there. I'm like, honest to God, I wouldn't even care. Right now, close my eyes. Wish
I
was
was just
over.
taking it.
You know what I mean? It's like, I was so tired, and then everyone got up, and they were giving us good lessons. They showed us a couple moves and stuff. Dude, I was out in the front on this freaking AstroTurf, dude, just like dying. Yeah. And one of the doctors in our group, Tim Sanford, I don't know if you know him yet.
No.
He's down in Arizona, but he was just pouring water over me. And I'm like, I have never been more gassed in my freaking life. Yeah. And it wasn't even a mental thing. That's the worst, right? When it's not a mental thing, it's actually just your body's just done. You just took it too far. Lactic acid or whatever, right? And ever since then, I'm like, dude, I have got to get flexible. Like, I'm just, because I would have been more dominant the entire, all the matches, right? The last match I went against my friend Mel, he's a real strong bro, Polynesian guy. And, man, I just remember thinking, man, if I was just more flexible, I could have been on top more. And I don't know. I mean, people say do yoga, and I'm like, okay, yoga's cool. Like, whatever, But like, I don't know. There's something with flexibility that just, I think goes in a lot of people, right? There's not a lot of people I think are really flexible.
No, but you can train to get there. Like we were trained to really like dig in and power through, right? Yeah. Like in our hips and stuff. And what I do a lot now is that's still applicable and good. Like you do want the ability to burst and explode. But what I try to do, especially in the last 2 months, is length with strength. So essentially you want to put yourself in like that top end of where it could be and then strengthen that position. Yeah. So that's why Zercher squats are so good, is because it puts you in the actual position a lot of the times where you'll be, and then you're pressing through it. Your hips are a little bit more torqued out. You're getting a little more length in the front versus like a deep squat where you're like, it's on your back and you're powering through. Yeah. It's just a little bit different. And then, Ty's got me hooked on this stuff, but like weighted things that you're picking off the ground. So balls, sandbags, things like that.
Like kettlebells count?
Kettlebells, kettlebells are really good. And then, length and positioned where your body could be. So I do a lot of hamstring stuff now where typically I didn't a lot, because you can't get to a flexible position if your body doesn't think that it can hold itself there. Does that make sense? Yeah. Like if it will tighten up if it doesn't, like the nervous system doesn't trust it, that lengthened position. That's where injury usually occurs too. Yeah. Yeah. So that's a lot of what I try to do is, there's a few guys that are just absolute beasts at this. A couple guys have come through our gym. They have been like, I follow them and they're just, top dogs in this kind of thinking. But Ty's an incredible dude when it comes to like legit strength and mobility for big guys. And that's why I'm bringing him up. Yeah. Because I mean, that will help you quite a bit. Yeah. What's really interesting too, is I'm sure you can relate to this, but like my jiu-jitsu story. So one of my best friends that I played ball with, he owns Crown. He's one of the owners of Crown. Okay. And so for a few months, like he had been doing it for I think like a year and a half at the time, at somewhere else. And he'd be like, bro, you got to come and like, come train or whatever. And I'm like, that's lame, dude. That's like so stupid. Like a bunch of dudes just sweating on each other with like pajamas. Like, no. And ultimately, he's like, hey, like I had no excuse. I think it was like a holiday weekend or whatever. He's like, you got to come in. Like, we need some bigger guys. Like we're training for, some competitions or whatever. And I'm like, oh, ego, like, yeah, I'll be one of your bigger guys and beat the crap out of you guys,
Yeah.
So I come in and literally just get smashed. And it was so humiliating for myself to be like, oh, like my whole identity of like being a big, strong guy and former athlete and walking around of I could just beat the shit out of people if something happened.
Yeah.
Like that reality just, crumbled.
Yeah.
And then I was like, I need to figure this out. The worst part was Matt Martinez is his name, and one of the nicest dudes. Also one of the like most, when you're like, that dude's a beast.
Yeah.
Like Matt in my friend circle is like, that's the dude I'm calling if like shit hits the fan.
Yeah.
Like Matt's like one of the first calls because his heart's so big, but he's also like the dude you trust with your life and would also you want in the alley with you kind of thing. So we'd compete all the time. And we do like, linebacker tight end drills. And sometimes I would, get the upper hand on him and, so it felt like kind of equal with like athleticism stuff.
Yeah.
Matt's got me full mount, just smother choking me. So just his chest in my face.
Yeah.
And I can't get out. And it is the most, have you been smothered yet? Like
no,
I've
had a lot of rear naked chokes.
Getting choked is one thing, but to get smother choked, if you can visualize if you're hearing this or you're listening to this, it's your face is in their sternum.
Yeah.
And they've got their arms around you and they're mounted on you so you can't get up from your hips. So your hips are pinned to the floor, their arms are around you, and they're squeezing your head and face into their sternum until you can't breathe and you choke. It is, and I'm a claustrophobic person. This is something that I've had to work on.
Yeah.
I'm tapping out because in 20 seconds it's going dark, but I'm getting smothered by this dude who I'm like, he should not be on me.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. And it was so humbling, but it's also so beautiful because now in my adult life, it's funny when I see people posture a lot, like a lot of people that yell a lot, like I'm an alpha or I'm a, like I kind of giggle because I actually know what those real alphas look like.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the ones that are the most scary dudes as far as true aggression and someone that would, do something that would, you don't want to be in an alley with kind of people are usually kind of the most loving and they're a little bit more calm personalities that aren't yelling a lot.
Oh yeah. That one dude with cauliflower ears is just totally chill. Watch out. There's a
guy, and I just met him. Like I've shaken his hand once, and so if you listen, his name is Will. I don't know his last name, but he's come through our gym. I can't remember what weight he's like a smaller dude. I think he's probably 150, 160 dude, 170 maybe. But elite, like I just found an elite level wrestler, right? So Jordan Burroughs, you know that name?
Mm-mm.
Like Olympic medalist type. He'd call him in to come train against him.
Oh, okay.
And I'm like, oh shoot, like he's like a one stripe white belt, like just started. He just did ADCC for people to understand what ADCC is like, basically the Super Bowl of grappling.
Okay.
He just went in there and just mopped the floor with people that are like brown belts and purple belts. And he's literally just put on a belt like one day ago. So there's like levels of it, but he's one of those guys. Like I think he's a real estate agent, but he's got a cauliflower ear and a big smile on his face. Yeah. But those are the dudes that you're like, oh my gosh. So I always think it's funny when I see guys like on social media that are like real like, I'm like, they might, but Joe Rogan talks about this too. Like there's like a 20% chance if you throw a haymaker and you connect, like, you can end a situation real quick.
Yeah.
But the moment someone puts your hands on you and you have some training, like, and you know what to do, like that's when, and they don't, like that's where, and you see it all the time play out. That's where things get really fun.
Yeah. The other one where Joe Rogan's like, oh, he's hitting me. I'll let him go. 20 seconds in, it's like, oh, you're losing steam, bro. That's what you're talking about?
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that made me laugh. No, it's super true though. I mean, I was in a lot of fights in high school and probably more on my mission. Funny enough. It's a different attitude. That's a whole other podcast.
Yeah.
But let's get at the pub every night. Let's go fight somebody. Oh, an American. Let's see what we can do.
Yeah.
It's like,
Okay.
Anyways, God, I'm like going through them in my head. But it's interesting to watch people's endurance, like endurances. That's part of the problem when I was doing jiu-jitsu a couple of weeks ago. Is it's like, oh, my endurance is like, whew. Actually kind of goes off a cliff, right? You're like kind of okay, and then boom,
Yeah,
you're just like dying.
So there's like two things in the jiu-jitsu endurance that's interesting. Yes, endurance, true endurance, like being able to have cardiovascular ability to handle that amount of time. But like we do 5-minute rounds a lot in our sparring sessions. What's really fun is that we do drilling for 20 minutes straight. Mm-hmm. So like our drilling sessions will be 20 minutes position, and you're just in and out, no rest, right? So that's like building some endurance, is building, when you're tired, like good technique, things like that. But when you get in a sparring session, your 5 minutes like sparring session, you've done maybe like two rolls prior or whatever, and you're going with someone that's legit, right? Or can match where you're at or better than you. That's when that's when another level of the endurance part takes over, which this is literally why I'm addicted to jiu-jitsu. This part, it's being able to control your nervous system, which is the way in which you breathe. So it's really interesting when we get tired, we typically mouth breathe, right? Mm-hmm. Right. And when you're doing jiu-jitsu, if you can catch yourself mouth breathing and slow it down, so you hold the position, you can bring down your parasympathetic nervous system, bring down the nervous system to relax.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
So your heart rate, so you can, then you're in control of your heart rate. Yeah. So it's a similar concept with like ice baths. Like when guys jump in, that's why I'm addicted to ice baths too. Yeah. Jump in an ice bath, your body goes shock, right? Breathe. And then you can transition the nose. But it's the same thing with jiu-jitsu. There's these spikes of adrenaline, and then there's the spikes of the respiratory like spike with that. Yeah. But the moment you can control your breathing pattern to bring down your heart rate, the longer you can last in those 5-minute rounds. Oh, okay. So where you're pushing through the 2 minutes and you're like all strength or whatever, you're going to burn, like you'll just get shot. You're going to burn out. But if you can control those bursts and then control your breathing, that's when you take over. Like Hickson and Gracie's got a famous book, right? It's called Breathe. I recommend it. It's awesome. But like breath is life. And in, Hickson's one of arguably, he says, probably the famous Gracie. But they all are competing for that like title, right? But Hickson's a beast because he was in Japan, did Vale Tudo, did like all the MMA stuff over there too, while the UFC was going. Yeah. So he's a little bit less known in America, but very widely known like overseas. But in his book, he talks about that, but he incorporates how breath has helped his life and controlled his life. So like my parts with jiu-jitsu in the breathing part, you build these motor skills just like football, dude. Like how many times did you take a step and then you'd basically close your eyes, you could teach, you'd do it in, in your sleep. That becomes part of your life too with jiu-jitsu. But what I like that translates over to my normal life is the way in which I breathe. Yeah. Is when I get stressed and I can catch myself feeling stressed.
Nice.
I can control my breathing. That's
so
what
when you're rolling, are you always trying to just breathe through your nose the whole time?
In times when I'm trying to bring down my system. Yeah. There are times where I'm mouth breathing just because it's getting intense through like a scramble or whatever. But if you get to a position, either I'm in a framed position, like from a defensive position, or I'm in an offensive position and I'm controlling the movement. Usually if there's a part where I'm trying to transition, in that transitional period, I'm trying to control my breath and bring my heart rate down.
Do you ever notice when your opponent is breathing too heavy? Are you kind of like licking your chops a little bit?
Big time. Yeah. Yeah. That's the biggest thing I've learned from Matt. Matt's really good at this. Yeah. Like he'll catch me if like he's caught my back or something and I'm not nasal breathing. Like we'll just kind of joke around, but he'll be like, breathe, bro. And he's on my back and he's like fighting for like a choke hand or something. I'm like, you mother.
Oh, I love that. How often do you go?
Almost every day.
Do you go?
If I'm in town, I'm going. Even like so I have my corporate job while I'm building business with Nick. When I head to my headquarters, it's in New Jersey. I've got a basically second home out there with the Immortal Jiu-Jitsu crew out there in Clifton. Yeah. So they let me train out there with their group, bunch of killers over there. So I go regardless of where I'm at, I'm usually trying to.
Oh, super cool. Yeah, that's fun.
It's addicting. When are you come in, man? So Crown, you're gonna come?
I'm gonna come right after Spain.
Okay, sweet.
Yep, coming right after Spain. And I've been talking to, I think it's Gustavo. Is that one of the guys over there?
Oh yeah.
Gustavo. Yeah. I just filled out the form. He reached out to me and, was inviting me and texting me and stuff. And I was like, yeah, man, blah, 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 I just, I don't know. I don't even know, dude. I don't even know why I like it. I just have this thing where I want to do jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
I'm a huge Rogan fan. I used to love the UFC. I haven't really watched it in a while, but I don't know. It seems like a really good workout. I don't know. It seems like the headspace of people I want to be around, probably.
Oh my gosh.
Because the guys just kind of show up and we're just like figuring stuff out. We're trying hard and it's oddly friendly. I don't know if that's like a right way to put it. It's like your buddy, right? He's about to get you. He's like, hey man, you're not breathing good enough. It's it's just like,
dude.
So
you've hit it on the head. People, everyone in our gym, everyone that's coming in there is trying to better their life.
Yeah.
Everybody.
Yeah.
And there are people from all sorts of walks of life, females and males in there. Why I love it is because we share that commonality of moving forward. And like our professors, the owners, the coaches, and all the peer group, like they're all sorts of different, high net worth people.
Yeah.
People that come from different walks of life, people who've done a lot and who haven't done a lot are going to do a lot, right, in the future.
Yeah.
There's young dudes. There's these young, impressionable 20-year-old like freak athletes, that are starting probably when I wish I would have found jiu-jitsu, that are going to be just monsters in like 10 years, but can appreciate kind of the life lessons of some of the older guys, Yeah. That's why I love it. Is it's not really publicized as like a men's group.
Yeah.
It's like a low key secret men's group though.
Yeah, I can see that.
And that's why I love it, man. And, I'll speak for Crown. Like there's so many good gyms in Utah. Like, so first off, I would say if like any of this conversation between Mark and I piques your interest, like go do it, because even wherever you live, there's amazing professors and great people that have gyms in Utah. So first and foremost. But Crown, I'll speak to Mike, Matt, and Matt who have created Crown. They created an environment where they foster like very little ego. Like they don't allow, jerks to be in the room. But they've done it in a way where there's a high level of accountability and high drive. So a lot of people are pushing themselves to be really like hard drivers and better themselves athletically there, but also feel safe where they can be vulnerable and learn physically and emotionally in their life. And those three have created this environment with their team. So shout out to those guys and, for that. So anyone that's looking to go to Crown, like, man, you'll have a fun experience. Yeah. I've brought some people, like one of my buddies, Dusky, who put on an awesome event that I spoke at a couple weeks ago. He was looking into doing some stuff, and I'm like, dude, just come out and see if you like it, right? Like where you're like, I don't know why I went, but I just wanted to see it. I did the same thing. And Dusky went this morning. Like, so he's now good. Yeah. Good. So like he saw it, and he got a little bit of a taste of it and the bug, but there's a reason why this is catching fire too, because again, back to like what men need to feel like they're building, and they're also like accomplishing something. So this is like a micro accomplishment every day. That's why ice baths and like cold showers got really popular, because like people were like, oh, I have this micro accomplishment, which is very healthy for your mental health. But in jiu-jitsu, you get this micro accomplishment too, which is pretty dope. Yeah. And the more you're around it, it's a never ending, like you never master jiu-jitsu. Like I'll talk to the 6th degree black belt who's been doing it since they're like, moving, right? This is all they know is jiu-jitsu. And they'll be like, do you feel like you've got it all? And they're like, no, like I haven't even started. And you're like, what? Like that makes no sense. Yeah. I'm sure your black belt buddies too, like same thing.
Yeah, no, and they're all, gosh, I just love the calm.
So calm, yeah.
It is.
Which is wild, right?
Hell,
so violent. So violent and so aggressive, but like, so calm.
Yeah. It's a beautiful sport. It really is.
Super dope.
And I actually found a gi that fits me, so it's even better.
That's awesome, dude.
I got this blue one, right? It's all dope. And if you open the inside, it's got all these sugar skulls on the inside. And I'm like, I'm almost like, is this too flashy? I'm like a freaking beginner. Why the hell did I buy this thing?
I'm going to get you a gift because one of my buddies just started a company, and shout out to James. I want to make sure that he's supported, but I'm going to get you a gift from this.
Okay, cool.
I'm going to text you, but he makes these really sick. They're some of the best belts just from like how sturdy they are.
Okay, cool.
But he does like Dior, Louis Vuitton.
Does he?
Oh, dude. And they're sick. So I'm going to get you that as a gift.
Yeah, tell him to kit me out. Well, my friend, we've hit an hour and a half.
Oh, sweet. That went by fast.
It did. I always ask my guests, though, I need your best 2 minutes of advice to finish it out.
Oh, this is a good one. Just because this is fresh, and I one of my friends, I sat with him on Saturday and we had this conversation. For anyone that's listening, if you're trying to figure out your life or make it better, remember that the power comes from within yourself. And my best advice, because it changed my life, was to fall in love with the person in the mirror. And to do that effectively, the first step is to actually have an honest conversation with yourself, looking at them in their eyes, that person. And this person happens to be you. So if you're questioning anything that you're doing, look at yourself in the mirror and have an honest conversation with that person looking back. That's what made all the difference in my life and in my second rebirth, what I would call it. And it continues to be where I have accountability checks. A lot of friends can give you really good feelings and really good movement forward, but the person, if you build a really great relationship with that person looking back at you in the mirror, that's where literally all the magic comes from. You are the answer to all of life's problems. And I think that is both can be daunting at times, but also so incredibly powerful in knowing that. And the other piece of advice that I would say is force, fear, and anger will only get in the way of you getting better. Love, abundance, and growth are the keys to success in life. Those are my two tips I'll leave you with.
Perfect, man. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Mark. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to the President McCormack Podcast, brought to you by McCormack Foundation, Saxton Fund, ADP Lemco, and Professional Floor Systems. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast and keep up with Mark on Instagram @President McCormack.